VRBO is fairly similar to Airbnb in the sense that as of right now, you choose one cancellation policy that will apply for the entire year. Now, Booking.com works very differently from Airbnb and VRBO. Booking.com offers a lot more flexibility when it comes to cancellation policies. You can actually create multiple cancellation policies for each of your listings, and you can also decide how you want to price them. And so sometimes I see bookings coming in for Booking.com that are at a much higher rate than we get them on Airbnb. One last question that I got from a listener is, should cancellation policies be the same over all the different platforms?
Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today is Monday, so you're listening to an episode of Rev Up where we talk about revenue management strategies, talk about what we are learning from managing 45 portfolios now across lots of different markets all around the world. We're managing over $80 million in top-line revenue right now, and we have a team of 5 revenue managers. And we share tips on our strategies to help you maximize your revenue. And today we are talking about cancellation policies. So today's episode is a part 2 from last week. Last week we talked about Airbnb cancellation policies, how those cancellation policies affect your bookings and your revenue, and what we think are the most revenue maximizing cancellation policies, if you will. And today I wanted to follow up and talk a little bit more about Booking.com and VRBO, because those platforms have different cancellation policies than Airbnb. Now, before I get into that, a quick update. One of the biggest pain points when it comes to Airbnb cancellation policies has always been the fact that you can only choose one cancellation policy for the entire year. And that brings a challenge because the cancellation policy should really be chosen based on the booking window. If you have a very, very short booking window, then you don't really need to protect your bookings as much by offering a stricter cancellation policy than if you're in a market where the booking window is very long. Because if people book very far out, that means it's going to be harder last minute to get a similar ADR as when people book far in advance, right? So somebody books 6 months out and they cancel 2 weeks in advance, you're probably going to have to book that property at a much lower rate. But if your booking window is 2 weeks to start with, then obviously the booking window just started in 2 weeks out. So then you don't lose much revenue if somebody books further in advance and cancels, because you have plenty of opportunity to still rebook that property at probably at a fairly similar rate. So the booking window plays a major role in choosing your cancellation policy. And that's why it doesn't make any sense that you can only choose one cancellation policy for the entire calendar year. Because in some markets, especially markets on the beach, the summer might have a booking window of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. Sometimes in some markets, people book a year in advance. Right? They book next year, summer, pretty much after they check out. So for those summer months, you want to have a much stricter cancellation policy than in the winter months, which we are in now. You know, it's hard to get bookings. So you want to offer people more flexibility, and you're not losing as much when people cancel because you're not really getting high ADRs anyway. So it doesn't really make sense to have one cancellation policy for the entire calendar. And this is feedback that hosts have been giving Airbnb for a long time. I mean, for as long as I remember being an Airbnb host, and I've been an Airbnb host now for 13 years. And for as long as I remember, people have been asking for for a dynamic cancellation policy. And finally, Airbnb has listened. And this was actually pointed out to me today on a call that I had with one of our clients. So shout out to David. David, if you're listening, thank you for sending the message that you received from Airbnb. If you're ever going to Oregon, definitely stay with OR Getaways. And the dynamic cancellation policies are going to be rolled out in early 2026. We don't know exactly when. We do know that it depends on the market that you're in. And so you're going to be able to set a different cancellation policy for different times of the year. So that's really nice that they are introducing that. So excited about that update that Airbnb is going to make. They're going to make some other updates as well. It says improved price tips and updated earning dashboards. And let me see if there's anything else. I think that's all I'm seeing right now. So you might be able to find this update if you go to news.airbnb.com. Anyway, that's Airbnb, right? So now let's talk about VRBO first, because VRBO is fairly similar to Airbnb in the sense that as of right now, you choose one cancellation policy that will apply for the entire year. So each listing can only have one cancellation policy. Plus, on Airbnb, actually, you can offer a non-refundable rate and give people a 10% discount. So on Airbnb, I guess you can there's two options: the cancellation policy you choose and then the non-refundable option. On VRBO, I believe you don't have that non-refundable option. I think, well, you can choose non-refundable, but that will then be your cancellation policy, essentially. Now, the next policy is called strict 60 days, similar to an Airbnb. You get a 100% refund. You cancel 60 days out or more, no refund after 60 days. Then they have a firm 60 day, which is similar to the strict 60 day one, but you get a 50% refund between 30 and 60 days before check-in. Then there's moderate, which is a little confusing because Airbnb also has a moderate. On Airbnb, moderate means you can cancel and get a full refund more than 5 days out. On VRBO, it's more than 30 days out. So the moderate cancellation policy in VRBO is basically the same as the firm one on Airbnb. Although it's slightly different because on Airbnb, the firm one, you get the 50% refunds between 7 and 30 days out. On VRBO, you get it 14 to 30 days before check-in. You get that 50% refund. So the no refund period starts 2 weeks out for the moderate cancellation policy on VRBO versus 7 days for the firm policy on Airbnb. Now, the most flexible cancellation policy that VRBO offers is called relaxed. The relaxed cancellation policy means that the guest will get a 100% refund if they cancel more than 14 days before check-in and a 50% refund between 7 and 14 days before check-in. So the relaxed cancellation policy on VRBO is essentially the same as the limited cancellation policy on Airbnb, just to make it a little bit more confusing, right? Okay, so that's VRBO, pretty straightforward. Next up is Booking.com. Now, Booking.com works very differently from Airbnb and VRBO. Booking.com offers a lot more flexibility when it comes to cancellation policies. There's two main differences. The first difference is that on Booking.com, you can actually create multiple cancellation policies for each of your listings, and you can also decide how you want to price them. So they're customized in the sense that you can pretty much have full flexibility on determining when people can get a full refund and also what type of refund you want to give. You can give like a partial refund. So there's a lot of flexibility that you have on Booking.com. On the platform, if you go to reservation policies, that's where you can create all the different cancellation policies. And then once you've created the policies that you want to create, you can then add those policies on different rate plans. So you can charge a different rate for a different cancellation policy. So that is really nice that Booking.com offers that type of flexibility. And there's also a non-refundable rate that you can set on Booking.com as well. Now, obviously, I don't know if you really want to have too many different cancellation policies because there's a thing called choice stress. I don't know if you ever go to a supermarket. My wife likes to eat yogurt, and so she asked me to buy yogurt, and I go to the supermarket, and then there's like 12 different brands, Greek yogurt, there's yogurt from, I don't know, there's so many different options, and I never know, okay, well, what do I have to choose, right? It gives choice stress. The choice stress is apparently not good for making decisions. And so I think there's a thing where you can offer too many options, and it's just going to confuse the booker, and they might just like book something else because they don't know what to choose. The same reason that I like restaurants that have not too many menu options, because then it's just much easier to choose, right? You go to like Cheesecake Factory and they have like 500 different dishes, and it just makes it really hard to choose. So anyway, Okay, so I don't necessarily recommend that you like 5 different cancellation policies and offer those all at a different rate. But I do think that on booking.com, it is advisable to have the non-refundable rate and at least one more flexible cancellation policy. And the reason for that is that when I use booking.com a lot, and I noticed that most hotels are using the non-refundable and a more flexible policy. So whenever I book something on booking.com, I'm always expecting to see that non-refundable and the normal or more flexible cancellation policy. I think there's something to be said for like putting your settings in a way that what people expect. Because like I can tell when I properties on booking.com, if I don't see that non-refundable option or that flexible option, it almost makes me feel like there's something missing. And it kind of confuses my brain a little bit. So I think on booking.com, you want to have that non-refundable option and choose one flexible cancellation policy. You could do more. Something that I'm definitely going to be experimenting with more in the future is offering different policies at different prices. But there's also something to be said to keep things simple, right? Because the more stuff you create, the harder it is to understand the bookings and everything. So I always like to keep things as simple as possible. I always challenge myself before I overcomplicate matters. But I think this is definitely something that I want to personally experiment more with in the future.
What's up, guys? Eric here. And before we dive into this episode, I want to introduce you to our podcast sponsor, Freewyld Foundry. Freewyld Foundry is a revenue management service, white glove, high touch service for the top 1% short-term rental operators. We're currently managing over $60 million in bookings, 1,700 listings worldwide, and we are growing very, very quickly. Our RPM program is a done-for-you revenue management service, and I want to invite you, if you are a short-term rental operator that's doing $1 million or more, or maybe about 15 listings or more, head over to freewildfoundry.com and apply for one of our free revenue audit reports. This is where Jasper and the team will actually take a look at your pricing strategy, audit all of your Airbnb listings, and let you know if you're leaving money on the table. So this is free to everyone who's listening to this podcast. Head over to freewildfoundry.com and apply for your free audit report.
So booking.com, definitely have a lot of options. And by the way, if you are not on booking.com yet, I definitely recommend you start using that platform. I know it's a lot harder to onboard with booking.com, and that's why a lot of hosts are kind of hesitant to start using that platform. But what I'm noticing is that the booking.com is putting a lot of focus on vacation rentals on the platform, and they're also putting a lot of focus on the US market. And so it is easier to get a account manager in the States on booking.com than it is anywhere else. And also they're really pushing the short-term rental units that they have on the platform. And so I've seen some pretty good traction for some of our clients that have recently onboarded with booking.com. I'm seeing that the platform develops pretty well. And also sometimes you can get much higher prices than on Airbnb, because I think Airbnb is still known to a lot of people, still known as an affordable platform. And Airbnb is also really pushing that perspective, right? That Airbnb is an affordable platform. They want to be an affordable alternative to a hotel versus booking.com is originally a hotel booking platform. And so sometimes I see bookings coming in for booking.com that are at a much higher rate than we get them on Airbnb. And there, you might ask, hey, are you putting a different price on booking.com? Well, we're not, kind of. Because on booking.com, you want to use discounts like mobile discount and Genius. Depending if somebody is a Genius or is booking on mobile or not, the price can vary quite a bit. And so, sometimes we see people that are not Genius and they're not booking on mobile, and then they book, but then they're paying like 20% more because they're not leveraging those discounts. So I think booking.com is a big opportunity. So if you're not on booking.com yet, I would definitely recommend check it out, because it's definitely a platform that is up and coming in the States. And also because Airbnb is now so strict with, if you get like a 3-star, 4-star review, your listing might get removed, or your visibility might crash. We've talked about this a little bit on in other podcast episodes. I think more than ever, it's a good idea to diversify over different channels. And so I think VRBO, Airbnb, Booking.com, most markets should be your go-to channels. All right, that's it for today. A little bit shorter episode. I just wanted to finish that conversation from last week. So just to wrap up, we've covered cancellation policies on Airbnb, on VRBO. We covered it on Booking.com. Booking.com offers a lot more flexibility when it comes comes to cancellation policies. Airbnb is going to introduce seasonal cancellation policies in the near future, and hopefully VRBO will follow suit. One last question that I got from a listener is, should cancellation policies be the same over all the different platforms? And I think I touched on that a little bit last week as well. But yeah, I think it makes sense to have the same cancellation policies on different platforms. You might want to have a more flexible cancellation policy on your direct booking channel to encourage people to use the direct booking channel. And also, if you are focusing on a certain channel for whatever reason, like for example, at booking.com, you want to have free reviews as soon as possible because then you're eligible for the Genius program. And so if you're new to booking.com, you might say, hey, you know what? I'm going to offer a more flexible cancellation policy on booking.com than I am on the other channels, just to get the momentum going a little bit on that channel. And one strategy that you could use, like right now, obviously we're in the low season in most markets, some markets not, but most markets were kind of in the off season, right? If you're starting to use booking.com now, one thing you could do is you could offer a very flexible rate. And so a competitive rate with a flexible cancellation policy, but then you could block the summer. So you could only open up the calendar on booking.com until, let's say, Memorial Day, when typically markets, but that's typically when the high season starts in a lot of markets. If you block the calendar for the summer, you can offer that flexible cancellation policies, get some bookings in fast now, and offer that competitive rate with flexible cancellation policy to get some momentum and without running the risk of somebody booking for next summer and then canceling last minute and you having to rebook at a much lower price. So there's the ways that you can play around with these cancellation policies to encourage people to book on certain channels. I think especially for new listings, I think that's a good idea because with new listings, you just want to get bookings. You want to get bookings as quickly as possible. So it's not a bad idea to just put the cancellation policies on flexible and then just block the calendar, just open up the calendar for the next couple months just to get some bookings in, right? So there are definitely reasons why you might want to diversify and have different cancellation policies on different platforms. But I think for units that are stabilized, they're performing well, they've got reviews on all the platforms, in that case, there's not really a reason, I think, to have different cancellation policies. Although on booking.com, because you can offer different rate plans, you can offer a different price for a different cancellation policy. That will be the only platform where it can make sense to offer different policies at different rates. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you have a great week. We are going to be talking in the next few weeks. We are going to be talking more about the FIFA World Cup. Just as a reminder, December 5th is a very important date because that's when the draw of the FIFA World Cup happens. If you haven't listened to the episode about the FIFA World Cup, I highly recommend you listen to that episode because I think the FIFA World Cup is probably going to be one of the biggest drivers of revenue in 2026. And so it's very important that if you manage your own revenue, that is, it's very important that you're educated on the event, what the most important dates are, how to maximize your revenue. So yeah, in the next few weeks, we'll be talking more about the FIFA World Cup. Highly recommend you listen to the episode. I think we published it 2 weeks ago where we talked about the World Cups. That's what's coming up. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Have a great week and we'll see you next time.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.